Come on, guys, let's start with a little bit of enthusiasm. Ryan, you know how to do it. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, guys. Today, let me take your current understanding of the 7 habits of highly effective people, and let's focus that on something that's important to all of us Rotarians, and that is our theme this year of Imagine Rotary. Now, why? It's because when we join Rotary, we buy in to this idea of service above self. So today, what I'd like you to do is to turn inside and think about what this means to you, and then what this could mean for our Rotary Club in the future, especially in 2022-23, where we focus on imagine what Rotary could become. Well, here's what we learned years and years ago from Stephen Covey. Number 1, be proactive. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. Number 3, take first things first. That's the private victory, the victory of you over yourself. Second, habit 4, think win-win. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Habit 6, when we can do this successfully, we can synergize. Now, habit 7, sharpen the saw. Every day, in every way, we can get better. Now, where did this come from? Well, Stephen Covey had this idea for his PhD program at BYU. He decided to read all of the self-help literature available from 1776 to 1976. That was his thesis, and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is the result of all of that reading. That's why a lot of us read it in the past, and now my suggestion is that you pick it up and you read it again. So, there are several great, so when you do this, a couple things are going to happen. Number 1, you are going to create a better relationship with someone who's close to you, be it in Rotary or in your personal life. Second, you're going to be able to focus on you, making the important improvements to help you become a more effective mother, father, worker. And last, and this is what Covey makes a point of at the end of the book, and that is, so once you read it again, share it with someone who's close to you and help them begin to ascribe these principles. Now understand, these are not Covey's principles. These are the ones that he discovered and he summarized from all the reading that he did for his PhD project. Now, there are several good ideas that are part of 7 Habits. One of the most important ones is the idea on the concept of paradigms. Not Stephen Covey's word, but the idea of that a paradigm is a way of thinking. It's how we see the world. Where did it come from? It could come from your parents, could come from your environment, where you grew up, but we have these ideas that cause us to think and do the way we do. So, Covey's idea is this: we have the potential to shift our thinking. A paradigm shift. So, one of the examples in the book that I fell in love with is this one. Remember this. So, when you saw this originally, you saw a woman And probably the way you saw it back then is the image you see today. So, Skip,
Yes.
what do you see?
An old woman.
An old woman. How old would you say she is?
A couple decades over me.
Got it. So, let's see. Mike Cowles, what do you see? Are you looking at the same photograph? So would this be the kind of person, Skip, that you'd say, if you weren't married, you'd take a second look at an attractive woman?
Not if it meant peace on earth.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, wait a minute.
There seems to be a disagreement here, Mike. Is this the kind of woman that you might take a second look at and maybe be attracted to?
But she's a lot younger if that counts for skill.
What's going on here?
Are you serious? She's a lot younger.
Where do you see the old? I can't see the old one.
Suzanne,
I think she looks like a survivor.
she looks like
A survivor?
Which one? The older or the younger?
A survivor.
a survivor. She looks like a survivor.
She's got a
So-
smile.
So when we look, I'm sorry.
She's got a smile. She's wrapped up, it's cold, but she's still.
'Cause you are.
She's still going forward.
Right. So there's a little problem here. Some of you see an old woman and some of you see a young woman. And if we could continue the conversation here, I might even be able to get these guys into a disagreement. Yet, we're looking at the same image. To what extent is this true as we work with our spouses, our kids, our grandkids, the people we work with? We're looking at the same darn thing and yet we disagree. So what's the solution, Suzanne?
It doesn't matter to all you young or semi-young or old guys in here. Doesn't matter whether she's young or old. If she's still, back me up, Gayla, if she's still working and still active and still thinking, relevant.
Absolutely. So let me help you.
So there.
What if I showed you this image? All right. Now, can you see two women? Aha. So when you're managing people, when you're trying to get people to agree, this concept that Covey introduces, this paradigm concept, is a notion that we can both look at the same issue and see something completely different. Now why? It's because of our conditioning. It's because of where we grew up and how we grew up. So it influences our thinking. And this notion of rethinking how you see things is an important element of how we can see the Bowling Green Rotary Club become an even better club. Now, so let's apply Imagine Rotary about our 4 avenues of service. First avenue of service is to our community. Now, if you were going to give us a grade as a club on community service, given how well we performed during the twin tornadoes and how we became one of the focal points, especially working with the sheriff to make sure that there were funds available to people who really needed them. I thought we did a great job. So how can we look through this to another challenge that the community needs? Second, how about our club? What can our club become? You know, in the last 2 years, we've increased the number of women to men dramatically. I can remember when my dad brought home to my mom at a time when only men were in Rotary, and he said, "Damn it all, we're going to have to let women in." And there was a disagreement at the table. And my mom joined. Graded my dad until this notion, Covey's notion of this paradigm, it began to shape his thinking. Why not? And so after that, now Rotary is a thriving organization, especially in the United States, that is introducing more and more women to Rotary. And thank you very much for all of you who are now Rotarians. Now, third avenue of service, vocational service. Respecting every moral job. And how we can help people as a club get good jobs that enable them to live successful lives and take care of their families. This is an American idea that our club can really improve. And last, international service. My friend Rob Porter has done a masterful job with improving the quality of water in Haiti. But in fact, there are 10 times as many service opportunities in the developing world than we have here in America. So, if I were to give us a grade on international service, it would probably be on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 2. How can we imagine how our club could respond to some of those critical needs outside of America? Now, let's now take a look at the 7 habits. Let's review them. Number 1, be proactive. Take 100% responsibility for everything that affects you. When you say that, you say, yeah, but it's not my fault. You know, I didn't cause it. That guy just ran into me. What Covey's saying here in this first principle, which is age old, it's not Covey's idea. He got this by reading all of this self-improvement literature, and that is, in order to become more effective, we've got to take 100% responsibility for what happens in the sheriff's office. What if it's not your fault? What if you don't have enough funding? It doesn't matter. Second, once you have agreed and decided that I'm going to take 100% responsibility, then you use the human endowment of imagination. And you say, begin with the end in mind. So what could we do? This is uniquely human. We get to look into the future and then set that as where we're headed, and then begin to let the chips fall. Once we've identified that vision, that mission, then we can say to ourselves, habit 3, take first things first. Now, what does this mean? Well, here's Covey's graph of trying to uncover, as we've set our vision, okay, what should I do first? What should I do second? I've got this vision. So Covey says the answer to that is helping you walk through a new paradigm of understanding the difference between what's urgent and what's important. So he graphs it. Upper curve on the left is importance, across the top, urgency. So let's look at quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 are those things that are both important and urgent. What's an example of those things that you deal with in your life? Charlie? Important and urgent. So Charlie says it's focusing on making me productive. Yeah, and these are fighting fires. It's taking care of things that are in front of you right now. So this is the do column. This is where lots of people spend a lot of time in their lives. Now, so Covey then says, how about quadrant 2? Quadrant 2 is the quadrant that is important but not urgent. So how many of you, you don't have to raise your hands, how many of you exercise on a regular basis? So how many of you plan your week in advance? This is the quadrant that is important but not urgent. So it requires us to use the discipline of self-management. Your own will to say, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to get my grandkids together this weekend, and I'm going to do this for them because that's going to help them become better human beings. Is that urgent? No. It's important, but it's not urgent. So Covey's overriding suggestion is figure out how to operate more often in quadrant 2. When you can operate in quadrant 2, then some of the fires that are burning hot in quadrant 1 reduce because you're doing things in advance rather than when they're burning hot. So you might say to yourself, where do I get the time to do it? Hang on. First, quadrant 3. Urgent, but not important. How about email? How about returning certain calls? Things that seem urgent, but really aren't important. Suggestion? Delegate. Get those off your plate. Fourth, if you really want to know where to hunt for additional time, it's in quadrant 4. Not urgent, not important. Don't raise your hands. How many of you are involved in social media? Quadrant 4. Almost always. Responding to people, liking someone. What quadrant's it in? So if you're searching for where to find more time to focus your efforts in quadrant 2 that's important and not urgent, you start with quadrant 4. So each one of you, on your own, you could draw up this quadrant this afternoon and you could graph, where do I spend most of my time? In our jobs, it's in quadrant 1. You need to do it now. Get it done, do it now. Get it done, do it now. Where can I become more effective as a human being? Quadrant 2. If I can think in advance what needs to be done, then I'm not hustling to do something at the last minute. Now, what I've just discussed in the first 3 habits is represented here. This is Covey's maturity continuum. And at the bottom is what we call dependence. You're dependent on others physically, emotionally, psychologically. But the way to become independent is to ascribe to the first 3 habits. Take 100% responsibility. Begin with the end in mind. What do I want? Okay, what do I need to do right now to get me closer to that? When you engage in those 3 habits, then you are becoming a more independent person. Now, is that the end? No. That just prepares you to become an effective person engaged with others. So, habit 4. Think win-win. What does this mean? Well, there are multiple other options available to us. If you've ever been involved in sports, you know that sports is win-lose. Right, Mike? Win-lose. And sometimes you get engaged in situations where you're opting for lose-win. Well, I just won't make any money on this. I'll just help this person. Even though I don't feel like doing it, it's lose-win. That works in the moment, doesn't work long-term. How about just win? Boom, I'm gonna win. Does that work? No, no one wants to deal with that kind of person. So habit 4 is about not stopping in any situation until you can come up with something that is a win for the other person at the same time as a win for me. And make that your paradigm of how you're going to work well with people. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is one of the hardest ones. Because if you think back in school, how many classes in listening did you take? Not a damn one. Now your parents may have been good teachers in helping you listen, but that skill is not well taught. So why is it that we have lots of people out there who don't listen and don't care? Now if you want to be effective from Covey, you arrive at the mindset, okay, I want win-win. So how do I do it? When I'm in an environment that I disagree with someone, what should I do? Well, certain people will disagree. They'll say, no, you're wrong. Now, wait a minute. Does that help you work with that other person? Is that a win-win? The answer is no. So instead of disagreeing, why don't you ask, why don't you say, you know, that's a good point. Why is that your opinion? You seek first to understand, then to be understood. Now, why is this so valuable? Because ultimately, when this becomes a habit of yours, then synergy begins to emerge. What is synergy? It's the ability to think win-win. Okay, I'm not going to stop in this disagreement until I can come up with a solution that's a win for me and a win for you. Got it. So I ask, so why is that your opinion? Why do we disagree? And I listen to that person's opinion. Once I consider that non-judgmentally, even though I disagree, I listen to it because then there is the opportunity to synergize, and that is to bring two ideas together so that 1 and 1 can equal 17. Great stuff, boy. Man, powerful. So these are the 6 of the first 7 habits. And what we've done here is we're approaching becoming more independent because we're applying the first 3 habits. Then we say to ourselves, okay, how am I going to build high quality relationships that are intentional with the people that I want? And the answer is, I'm going to adopt win-win. I'm going to stop arguing, and I'm going to try to figure out how to work with someone else so that both of us can achieve a win. And what I have to start doing is listening better. And when I do that with the people I work with my family, with my friends, as I begin to shift my paradigm. I begin to say to myself, you know what? That's a good point. I never thought about that. And that is the avenue that gets to synergy. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. This is a continuous process, once you got the first 3 habits going, in which you seek to improve your effectiveness every day. Every day in every way, I'm getting better. This is the engine that can drive it in the United States of America. Now, my recommendation to all of you. Get on your bookshelf. Hunt down your old, moth-eared 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and begin reading it again with a focus on how the Bowling Green Rotary Club can become a better club. Imagine what Rotary could become. I'm convinced that when you do this, an ancillary benefit is you're going to create a better relationship with someone that you already have a good relationship with right now. Second, you're going to focus on yourself. And whether you're a young guy like Charlie Hardcastle, or you're 16, this is a way to re-energize your life. It's become a little bit more effective and last. Once you begin practicing this again, you're going to want to share this with someone that you're close to help them begin the stepping stones toward becoming a more effective person. Now, can I entertain any questions? So, when I deliver, this is the book that I use for my Salesforce management class at Western. I'm going to teach one course. I threw out the textbook for Salesforce management because I was boring. And I didn't think that 21-year-olds who were going into sales needed to learn how an organization is managed. So instead, I bring in people like Mike Cowles, who was there last week, who is a former excellent manager, and he and I have a discussion up front about how sales organizations ought to be managed. And that helps students understand a bit better the kind of organization that they are going to be engaged in. So, one of the questions is, a student came up to me and said, Mr. Derry, I can tell you I know what I need to do. And I can have a list, or I can put it down, but I can't make myself do it. What do I do? Well, what do you think Covey says? Begin with the end in mind. What do you want? You're a senior. You've invested all your time and energy in a career. Now what do you want? Look out further than tomorrow. And then revisit it over the next couple days and weeks. And if you're sure that's it, then step 2. What do I need to be doing right now differently? And it can be something as simple as Jordan Peterson says, make your bed. Make your bed. Begin the process of becoming more effective. Okay, any other questions? Rob?
Yes, totally concur with you on listening habits. Salesmen like to talk, and what they should do is listen, and the client or whoever will tell you what you want to know. How do you train that? Is there some sort of muscle memory recommendation that you can give all of us that would help us be better listeners?
Come up and give this part?
I guess you want.
No, I'm just kidding. So it's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's simple. Selling is not telling. Selling is asking. That's a paradigm shift I have to help students make. It's not about me, it's about somebody else. Now, in terms of listening, how many different questions do you ask every day? How are you? Where are you going? What's for dinner? What else? See, you can't think because we don't ask questions as human beings. So you have to learn how to ask questions. Well, here's a little exercise that I apply to my students. You can apply right away. Once a day, when someone makes some point to you, they say, I believe that Western has a great football team. And your job, this is called I'm Curious, your job for the next 5 minutes is just to ask questions. So why do you think Western was so good? The person says, well, but they've only lost once. And you say, well, I wonder why they lost. And you ask, it forces you to listen to what the person said and then generate another question. At the end of that exercise, how does the person feel to whom you're asking the questions? Wow, what a great guy you are for making me feel special. that help you, Rob?
Yes, sir.
Now I'm listening. The Covey has 3 steps. And it's in seek first to understand, then be understood. First of all, repeat what the person said. Second step, rephrase what the person said. So what you're saying is blah, 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 blah. Third step is to invoke emotion. So what you're saying is you're upset about this, and this is really making you feel badly. Yeah. When that happens, now you got the attention of the person. You see, and in sales, trust is the #1 motivator. If a person trusts the salesperson, then the person will explain the problems they have. And a good salesperson, when he or she knows the problems, then they can reach into their toolkit, right, Joe? And then supply them with the product or service that's appropriate. That's what's called a good salesperson. Oh, another question. Charlie.
I feel like the days of selling is over. What you do is you make people want to buy.
Charlie says the days of selling are over. You gotta make people want to buy. The way we do this, the way I teach this, it's an old model, 35 years old, called spin selling. It's about the questions you ask and the order in which you ask those questions. The purpose being to understand whether a person has a need that your product or service can fulfill. So, Peter Drucker was fond of saying, last century, the goal of marketing is to make sales irrelevant. It's no more true than marketing on the internet today. If you've got a great idea and you can deliver this in whatever way that you can across the internet, then people will just buy. You don't need salespeople. But you need salespeople where the need is deep, and you need to bring that need out. And when you can bring that need up and get it on the surface and get the person to identify the problem, and then talk to you about the implications of not solving the problem, now all of a sudden, in all of that, they can say, oh, I understand what you want to do. You want to help me solve this problem. That's a good salesperson. Another question. How are we doing on time?
How do you
We're
do
done.
all that by email?
I'm sorry?
How do you do all that by email?
It's impossible. Thank you.